Good morning. Good morning. I hope you're out there. I hope I'm coming through. I never know. Uh, but anyway, welcome to Chapter 15, Part 1 of My Life with the Spirits. This chapter is the evocation of Orobos. Now, compared to others, it's a pretty long chapter. So we're going to divide it up into a couple of sections so as not to tire your attention span. Anyway, hope you're all doing well and are ready to hear the next installment of My Life with the Spirits. The evocation, excuse me, the evocation of Orobos. As I mentioned in the last chapter, Kabbalistic tradition divides the human soul into four parts: Nephish, the animal soul; Ruach, the intellect; Neshama, the divine soul intuition; and Chai, the life force. Because we're, quote, created in the image of God, unquote, these four parts reflect microcosmically the four Kabbalistic worlds that emanate from the great macrocosmic deity named Yod-He-Vav-He. In other words, my soul and your soul are miniature versions of the great soul of God, as above, so below. Theoretically, this means that we're all possessed with the same creative potential as our huge and vaporous counterpart. However, what keeps most of us from exercising our omnipotent prerogatives and doing godlike mischief is the unfortunate fact that there is a complete breakdown of communication between the four parts of our soul. We identify almost exclusively with Ruach and try to understand everything by means of our intellect. We disregard life force, Chai, which in the final analysis is probably our real identity, because the intellect alone cannot comprehend its profound subtlety. We are almost embarrassed when intuitive flashes from our neshama momentarily loosen the grip Ruach smugly holds on objective reality. Ruach even tries to rationalize the irrational attempts of our primitive animal soul. Blinded by Ruach's limited scope of perception, we erroneously convince ourselves that the higher aspects of the Nephish are simply the lusts and shortcomings of human nature. We cower in fear from the nightmarish demons of our lower Nephish and attempt to exile them to the infernal regions of our personal or denominational hell. And herein lies the source of much pain and suffering. Ironically, all four parts of the soul are already activated and fully functional. Yet because Ruach tyrannically monopolizes the cosmic projector, we're stuck with thinking about the cosmic adventure instead of living it. To remedy this unhealthy situation, the Eastern mystic ruthlessly assassinates Ruach and attempts simply to stop thinking. In Western ceremonial magic, however, we're not so anxious to throw the Ruach baby out with the bathwater. Instead, we ritualistically encourage the four parts of the soul to talk to each other, thereby emulating the cooperation exhibited by the four interfacing Kabbalistic worlds, our giant counterpart. Once integrated, the parts of the soul become the perfect reflection of the divine world, enabling the transcendent magician to wield the same immense power as the creative deity. As a naive young magician, I was rudely introduced to the various parts of my soul during my first attempt to conjure a demon to visible appearance. I'd been in the OTO for nearly a year, and I was still unemployed. Our old car finally died, and there was no money to replace it. Without transportation, job hunting in Southern California is almost impossible. I sold my piano and all but one of my guitars. The rent in our tiny apartment was paid through the month, but I had no idea where the next month's rent would come from. I still had a handful of guitar students who faithfully appeared once or twice a week to surrender $5 to listen to an hour of my stories. Only the joy of being able to spend time with Constance and little Jean-Paul and my magical studies afforded me distraction from the grim realities of life as a starving former artist. Among the texts recommended for my study was the first book of the Lemegeton, the Lesser Key of Solomon, commonly called the Goetia. I'll spell it for you, and you can pronounce it any way you want. It's Goetia. Translated in 1888 by S.L. MacGregor Mathers under the patronage of Aleister Crowley, this curious work is one of the most famous grimoires of all time. Perhaps its most notable claim to fame is its preliminary invocation, which was picked up and used generically by the magicians of the Golden Dawn. The bulk of the text is a description of 72 fallen angels, who, having been tossed out of heaven for being insubordinate, are supposedly cooling their heels in hell. The basic premise of Goetic evocation is this: a skillful magician, using his or her God-given authority as a human being, can summon any spirit he or she wishes and compel it to obey any demand within its ability to perform. Some spirits are handy for destroying your enemies, others can get you a girlfriend, or discover treasure, or teach you medicine, or astronomy, or mathematics. Upon reading the descriptions of this talented crew for the first time, I noted in my diary, quote, "No wonder Western religions are so stupid. There's been a brain drain," unquote. The book contains detailed operating instructions, complete with conjurations, constraints, curses, in cases that spirits are uncooperative, and diagrams of each spirit's unique seal. Now, although Goetia is recommended reading for beginning students, Goetic evocation is usually reserved for more adept and experienced magicians. Predictably, the thought of conjuring up a demon to help me get my material life together was a very attractive prospect. I wrote my superior in the order, and I told her how absolutely awful my material affairs were and that I was thinking seriously about evoking a Goetic spirit to help me out. She wrote back and lectured me in no uncertain terms that Goetic evocation was low magic, and I was not ready for such an operation, that it was dangerous and reckless, and if I needed a job, why didn't I just go out and get a job? She counseled me to continue with my yoga and preliminary magical practices and forget about evocation until I achieved knowledge and conversation of my holy guardian angel. I knew she was right, and I certainly respected her advice. Still, it was obvious from her letter that she did not realize how desperate I really was. On my spiritual practices when the future of my little family was at stake. I wrote her again. This time I simply asked, "Have you ever performed a Goetic evocation?" "Certainly not," was her answer. "That's low magic." Out of respect for my superior, I did not schedule an evocation. On the other hand, I did not feel that I would be too recalcitrant if I hypothetically selected a suitable spirit and started gathering up all the equipment and accoutrements that would be necessary for such an evocation, should I ever decide to do it. The spirit I selected was number 55 on the list of spirits, Orobos. The text read, "He is a great and mighty prince, appearing at first like a horse, but after the command of the exorcist, he putteth on the image of a man. His office is to discover all things past, present, and to come. Also to give dignities and prelacies, and the favor of friends and foes. He giveth true answers of divinity and of the creation of the world. He is very faithful unto the exorcist, and will not suffer him to be tempted of any spirit. He governeth 20 legions of spirits." For the life of me, I couldn't see why on earth this fellow could be considered an evil spirit. He gives dignities. Dignity was the very thing I lacked. I was in the humiliating and undignified position of unemployment, poverty, and starvation. I needed the dignity to provide adequately for my family. He gives prelacies. Now, at the time, I had no idea what prelacies were, and frankly, at the time, I didn't care. He gives the favor of friends and foes. Who couldn't use that? He gives true answers of divinity and of the creation of the world. Just the magical tutor I needed for my study of the Holy Kabbalah. He's very faithful unto the exorcist, and will not suffer him to be tempted of any spirit. That did it. This guy's perfect. Not only did it look like Orobos could help me pull my life together, he could also serve as a loyal familiar who would protect me from any nasty spirits who might want to mess with me. In short order, I had nearly everything I would need to operate. I could use masking tape to make a circle on the carpet in Jean-Paul's room. I made a poster board triangle. I made plaques with all the holy names I felt I would need to guard my circle. I had my almond wand and robe. For a mitre, I would use that little blue yarmulke with the name of a local Jewish mortuary stamped on the inside. I dutifully drew out 2 sigils of the spirit on beautiful paper, and I had my hexagram of Solomon pinned to my black robe, and I prepared an outline order of ceremony and customized a conjuration to memorize. I had everything ready except the holy oil. And that's where we'll stop today. We'll pick up the evocation tomorrow at the same time. I hope you're all being careful. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.